we move on to discuss the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers destroyed the Los Angeles Chargers to improve to 8-6. The LA Chargers drop now to 8-6 as well. Baker Mayfield had himself a great game, 22 of 27, 288 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. Mike Evans, monstrous game, 9 receptions, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irvin was able to run the ball really well as well. 15 carries, 117 yards, average an outstanding 7.8 yards a carry. It was an offensive clinical masterclass by that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense going up against one of the best defense in the league, and this LA Chargers team, they've been playing hellacious defense. Just in the last weeks or so, they held 19 to the Chiefs, 13 to the Falcons. They held the Titans to 17, the Browns to 10, the Saints to 8, the Cardinals to 17, the Chiefs to 17 yet again. The Raiders to Panthers to 3. They've been playing hellacious this year, but what Baker Mayfield did, he did something against this Chargers defense that no other quarterback has been able to do. That's hang 40 on them, throw for 4 touchdowns. Out of every other quarterback that's went up against them, he's had the best game. Him, and I thought Joe Burrow also played one hell of a game against them as well. Joe Burrow lost, but Baker was able to get the win. Played a great game, and the Chargers offense does lack that dynamism, that electricity, and they've always been a steady offense. They're always around the 20-23 point range. They never really go off in a game. They did have 34 against the Bengals, but they're about average. They average about 20-21 points, just because they lack that explosiveness. They don't have weapons as well. Besides McConkey, who's an okay player, not a wide receiver one player, they don't have much in terms of dynamism on that offensive side of the ball. And with the injury of J.K. Dobbins, it's difficult for them to maintain a run game as well, because J.K. Dobbins' electricity was a big part of that run game. And since he got injured in that Ravens game, that run game has not looked as strong, and against the Buccaneers, they weren't able to. Their top carrier was Gus Edwards for 8 carries and 23 yards. Buccaneers was able to do now. Honestly, this is more for me. This is a bigger representation of the Buccaneers than the Chargers, because we know what the Chargers are. Chargers play some really good defense, and they have an opportunistic offense with a good quarterback, and they're a really hella good coach team. But the talent on that offensive side ain't that good, and it's just that simple. At the end of the day, when you don't have the players on offense to generate the production, you're gonna struggle. And yeah, they're doing 8-6 because of how well they're coached, and they do have that franchise quarterback that can make the play when necessary, and they have a really, really good defense. But they have vulnerabilities to them, and we were kind of knew where they were. They're a team that will get into the playoffs, and depending on if they can get the right matchup, maybe might win a playoff game, but they ain't doing much after that. The Buccaneers, there's an element of unknown with them in the fact that I thought they start off the season, they started off really, really well. I was really impressed with them in their first couple of weeks. I think they started off 3-1. They had that really poor game against the Broncos, but they played, they beat the Lions and Eagles in that stretch. By the way, the Buccaneers, we'll get to that. But look, speaking of the Buccaneers though, they had that game against the Ravens where, they lost. They had missed opportunities in which they lost that game. They ended up losing that game 41-31. Early on, they looked like they were going to be able to get in control of the game. A bad interception by Baker Mayfield in red zone changed it, but then they suffered injuries. They lost Chris Godwin and Michael Evans. They're 2 guys on offense. Chris Godwin out for the year, and then Evans, we didn't know to the extent his hamstring injury. But after that game, the outlook on the Buccaneers season was really, really bad. Because, they already lost to the Falcons. They ended up losing to the Falcons the week later, and you're thinking, this team, they might be gone. They're gonna be gone because the injuries that they suffered. I thought it was over for them after that Ravens game. I really did. I didn't see no life for them back. And then on top of that, the fact that I thought it was over for them after that Ravens game, they went on to lose their next 3 to the Falcons, which was a really bad loss because that put them 0-2 against them. That gave the Falcons the tiebreaker. Then they lost to the Chiefs and they lost to the Niners on a heartbreaking last late winning field goal for the Niners. But since then, they've been able to reel off 4 straight wins and slowly started getting their mojo back. And a combination of that and the Atlanta Falcons slipping as well, with everything in their hands, controlling their hands. Suddenly now they're back at the top of the South with the game advantage over the Falcons. Keep in mind, the Falcons do have the tiebreaker, so they only need to match the Buccaneers record to win the division. But still, the Buccaneers, they've gotten themselves back into the lead there, and they've done a remarkably great job now that they've gotten Mike Evans back to regather the mojo. And people don't realize this Buccaneers team, the Lions and the Eagles, the Lions have 2 losses, the Eagles have 2 losses this season. Buccaneers, they beat them both. Both teams that are at the top of the NFC with 2 losses. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat them. They have the pedigree to be able to compete with them. They were 1 possession away from an NFC championship game last year against the 49ers. They lost to Detroit. But they went up in Detroit divisional round and they lost 31-23 or 24. 31-23. They went for a 2-point conversion early on for no reason. They lost 31-23. The ball was in Baker's hands to lead a potential game-tying drive. It ended up being an interception. But that's how close they were. So they have the pedigree. They have playoff experience. This is a team that I won't count out. I think they are legitimately the team I trust the most, or the team I trust the most to pull off an upset over against either the Eagles or the Lions in the NFC. Them and the Rams. I don't believe quite in Minnesota. Green Bay, that's also up there as well. I think Green Bay, because Green Bay are starting to look really good as well. Look, the NFC is going to be very, very interesting. I think the Buccaneers are going to have something to say about it. Of course, I think Green Bay, Detroit, Philadelphia as well. I think the Vikings and Commanders, I happen to not believe in those 2 teams as much. Yeah, it's crazy. The Vikings are 12-2. I just have a hard time believing in them really in that playoff stretch. But yeah, this Buccaneers team is electric. They're dynamic. They have a great quarterback. They have weapons with Mike Evans being back. The defense is opportunistic as well. They're pretty well coached. They're coached by a coach now that has playoff experience up his sleeves. I don't see why I can't see them, making a run in this postseason. And obviously they have to get there first to make a run, and obviously it's not clinched yet. They have that game advantage over the Falcons, but the Falcons do have the tiebreaker. Falcons close off the year, Giants, Commanders, Carolina. Tampa Bay close off their year, Cowboys, Panthers, Saints. Look, I fully expect the Buccaneers they should win those 3 games. They should. The key word is they should. They do have a bad gene, even going back to last year, where they'll drop a random game, kind of like how they dropped the game against the Broncos earlier this year, where you just think you're just scratching your head. So they have that gene in them. But the Falcons, they do have that game against the Commanders. If they lose to the Commanders, the Buccaneers will have to lose two of their games to bring the Falcons back in it. I don't see that happening. So the other 2 games for the Falcons, Giants, and Panthers, those are relatively easy.